What's happening, guys? This is Adi from Olympiacos International, and I have a very special guest with me today here to preview our Champions League match, our second match of the Champions League, this time going away to Arsenal, a foe that all of you should be very familiar with. I know some of you support Arsenal in the Premier League, but we've gone toe-to-toe with them many times over the course of our Champions League history and European history overall. And today I am joined by none other than James McNicholas from The Athletic. You might recognize him also from Arsecast Extra and as well as Gunnerblog. James, how are you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Surprised we haven't done this before, given how many times we've played Olympiacos over the years. But yeah, very happy to be here and really looking forward to the game on Wednesday night.
You know, I think when we started this show was like the season that our last season in Champions League, that COVID season. It was right during that time when we started the show, and we were probably so small at the time that it wouldn't have been on anybody's radar. So now we're a little more organized, right? So we can get this stuff going. But hopefully this won't be the last time we play against Arsenal. That's for sure.
Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, I don't know how it happens, but it seems to me that Arsenal, Olympiacos, when those balls come out the draw, they're like magnetic to each other.
Always.
But it's nice. I mean, it's good to have clubs that you start to recognize and know. And obviously over here in London, we've got a massive Greek population, so it's always a really good atmosphere with traveling fans, and also a lot of Greeks in London who manage to get tickets for those games. And yeah, they make a lot of noise, the Olympiacos fans, so they're always welcome at Emirates Stadium.
That's for sure. And my co-host Costa, my other co-host Dimitri will be there at the game in the press box, so they'll be, of course, making their voices heard as well. Even if they're in the press box, they'll always do that.
Yeah.
Now,
I'll watch out for the two guys celebrating. Take the lead. I'll tell security, get those guys out here.
I'll tell them to be careful and be on the lookout. Now, guys, before we get into the content, for those of you that are tuning in, don't forget to like and subscribe. The red and white community is continuing to grow. You can also support us on Patreon as well. Just check out patreon.com/307 International. And don't forget, there's a link in the description. Vote for us in the Football Content Awards. We are finalists again for Best Podcast International category. We are the first Greek-based coverage to ever be included. That was last year, and we're back again. So let's see if we can win something and prove that Olympiacos and Greek football matter. Now, James, let's start, as we always do with all of our special guests, with your background in football. How did you get started with football growing up? And then how did you come to write for The Athletic and be a part of Gunnerblog and Arsecast Extra?
Well, it won't surprise anybody to learn that I'm an Arsenal fan. I grew up supporting the club and was lucky to go to my first game when I was about 7, 8 years old. And then I was so passionate about it that I started writing about them. I just did it online on my own website, Gunnerblog, and from there met Andrew, with whom I co-host the Arsecast Extra. And there started picking up bits of journalistic work. So I did things for ESPN, for the Mirror in the UK, for Bleacher Report in the US. And when The Athletic launched in the UK 6 years ago now, I was part of their team covering Arsenal. And then since then, I've been lucky enough to sort of spend a lot of time covering Arsenal. Well, all over Europe. When we've been in Europe, we haven't always been during that period. We had our some dark times of our own, but overall, it's been a great experience. And I'm a very lucky man. I get to watch my football team play in some of Europe's most beautiful cities and talk about it and write about it. So can't complain. It's been a great ride, and it's about 20 years now that I've been writing about Arsenal in some capacity. So good times and bad along the way.
That's always, we have a saying for Olympiacos. We say, Olympiacos sta εύκολα, Thrylos sta δύσκολα. So it's Olympiacos in the easy, but the legend is in the difficult. So you're there for both the good and the bad.
Yeah, so, exactly. And right now it's quite a good time, exciting time to be covering Arsenal. The transfer window we had this summer was extraordinary. The amount of money that's being spent by the club to try and get over the line, to find the final piece in the jigsaw and go from contenders to winners. And Champions League is a competition they did really well in last season, got to the semi-final and were beaten by the eventual winners in PSG. Now the question is, can they do better than that? And this will be their first home game of the campaign, so they'll be hoping to make a statement.
Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about Arsenal and Arteta since Arsenal's return into Europe. Mm-hmm. How have you seen we'll say the transition, the evolution over each successive season? You see improvements. You brought up the success last season, making it to the semifinals, losing to the champions of the entire competition, and having such a great start in the season in the Premier League last year. And then, of course, Liverpool ends up winning the Premier League in the end. But how have you seen the change under Arteta, the improvements, and what that could mean for Arsenal this season? Do you think another step gets taken? How do you see everything with the changes that have been made?
Well, I think it's been a learning process for Arteta. Arsenal obviously had a season out of Europe entirely during his time with the club. And then slowly they've kind of stepped back up via the Europa League and then into the Champions League. I think until last season, there'd been a few question marks over Arteta in knockout football. He's always fared quite well in group stages, league stages, but sometimes in the knockouts had come a cropper. I think last season that changed a little bit with the way that they kind of comprehensively knocked out Real Madrid. That was a huge milestone in Arteta's young managerial career, a huge moment for the club, really. To beat Madrid, knock them out for about 20 years later, I think, in fact, after they did it, it was 2006 when they did it on their route to the final. And Arsenal hoped that this one would also end in the final. PSG had other ideas, but I have to say, even when Arsenal went out against Paris Saint-Germain in the semi-final, they were obviously behind for the first leg, which they lost at home. I thought the way they played in Paris, the way they attacked PSG, put them under pressure, was actually really impressive and showed that this is a team that's reaching maturity. They just couldn't find that finishing touch. They couldn't find the goals that they needed. They've sought to address that this summer. They've added a lot of attacking players to the squad. And so now let's see where they're at. I think Arteta has got to grips with the Champions League now. And I think Arsenal actually have the structure of a team that's quite well suited to Champions League football. They're very solid, very organized. They don't give up a lot of chances. They don't give up a lot of goals. And I think that gives them a really good foundation and basis. And some of these players now are more experienced too in the Champions League. The likes of Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard. These are younger players who, Declan Rice, who's a bit older, but had never played at Champions League level. Now they know what to expect. Now they know what they're getting into. And I think, there's a lot of talk about can Arsenal win the Premier League? But I think the Champions League is just as important for them. Arsenal have never won it. And that's a huge mark against the club and a big absence on their kind of roll call of honours. Listen, every fan of Arsenal is desperate for a Premier League, but a Champions League would be a unique achievement and something really, really special.
Is there any pressure? They had on one of the Champions League preview shows, they had a whole table of the squad valuations by roster. Arsenal had the highest valued roster in the Champions League. Is there any pressure that comes with the club that's associated with that? Oh, we have the most valuable roster in the Champions League. We have to do something. We have to make it further this year.
I think there's definitely pressure. I think you saw that, Arsenal just picked up a great win against Newcastle at the weekend, but the week before they drew at home to Manchester City. They got a late equaliser. Not an amazing result, but not a bad result either. But there was a lot of dissection, analysis, criticism, particularly of Mikel Arteta for being maybe too conservative. I think he's a guy who's under lots of pressure externally. I think in the mainstream media. I think there's a lot of focus on him because Arsenal have spent so much money, because they have this really talented squad. And I think among the Arsenal fans as well, I think while all supporters respect what Mikel Arteta has done and the way in which he's changed the culture and the fortunes of Arsenal, he still hasn't won a major trophy since the FA Cup in his first season in 2020 in COVID times. And sadly, none of the Arsenal fans really were there to celebrate that. So I think there's definitely pressure. I think the amount of talent he has at his disposal now, it's almost as if he has no excuses, right? There's no obvious missing pieces of the jigsaw. And I think that's always going to bring a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attention. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that, because if things do go badly for Arsenal, then definitely there's going to be a lot of conversation around the manager and his future. Although, personally, I don't get any sense that he's under pressure from, the board or the chief executive or anything like that. I think Arteta's really well respected and well liked at Arsenal and seen as a huge part of the club's recent revival. But I think fans and media are looking at him and saying, now he has to win.
Now, let's talk about that with respect to this match coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Arsenal at home are going to be favorites, a roster that's valued probably 10-1 over what Olympiacos has.
Mm-hmm.
A history, though, that is relatively even. It's exactly 50% Olympiacos and Arsenal in terms of the results they've had each other. It's been half a decade since we've seen each other in the Champions League, or sorry, not in Europe, I should say, almost, because the last time was in the Europa League.
Mm-hmm.
And there's pressure, obviously more pressure on Arsenal to get a result here. There is some pressure on Olympiacos because we failed to convert what should have been 3 points against the Cypriot champions Paphos. And Mendilibar in particular has had quite a bit of criticism for us with his play style. Very direct. His system, which is based primarily on the pressing scheme, is meant for bigger fish, bigger teams like Arsenal. Against the low block, we struggle always. Doesn't matter who plays it. And the worry for us is, well, one, of course, Arsenal's Arsenal. You guys can pass through a high press system in most cases very well. But then the conversation will become, well, if this is how we built our team and we struggle against the low block, but then it can't do what it does against a team like Arsenal, then what's the point? So how do you see Arsenal's approach to this match with the context of what Olympiacos' play style is, which is to press and let Arsenal come to us?
To be honest, I think that might be music to Arsenal's ears, because Arsenal struggle against low blocks too. I think actually breaking down low blocks is probably much more difficult than many people realize, but it's an issue Arsenal have had and one they're trying to deal with and trying to move past this season. I think if Olympiacos come out and press Arsenal from the front, I think Arsenal are one of the better teams in Europe, really, in terms of having the ability to play out through a press and play through those lines. They've got such able people on the ball at the back, the likes of William Saliba, Ricardo Calafiori. In midfield now, they've added Martin Zubimendi, who's pretty press resistant himself. So I think Arsenal will welcome that and be glad to not face a team who sit deep, 10 men, 8 men behind the ball, because Arsenal historically have struggled with that. And also, when I think about the centre forward Arsenal have, Victor Gyökeres, he's not necessarily a guy who thrives against the low block. He's someone who wants to run in the channels, run in the space. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Olympiacos approach it. Do you think Olympiacos will be aggressive in their press and look to push high up the pitch and win the ball in Arsenal's half?
That's generally how Mendilibar doesn't change.
Right.
We had the joke in the Conference League victory and then even in the Europa League about Mendilibar and what we call his giant Mendili balls, because he doesn't care. It's all out. We did the same against Aston Villa and it surprised them. And that's why we beat them over 2 legs. Mm-hmm. I don't think, especially in the first leg at Villa Park, that they expected that to happen.
Yeah.
Do you think this is something that would surprise Arteta at this point? I know he's more pragmatic. If he sees that this is how we play, even though we're a weaker team in his eyes, right, in the eyes of the Premier League, is he going to take chances, or is he going to say it's just Olympiacos, we'll play through it?
I think he'll massively respect Olympiacos' play style, and I think he'll be very well researched and informed on it. Arteta is a guy for whom preparation is everything, and I'm sure Arsenal's analysts will have given him a full, clear report on what to expect from Olympiacos. But as I said, I think that it could play to Arsenal's strengths a little bit. It could afford them a little bit more space in the opponent's half if they can play through those lines. And I think, the likes of Saliba, whoever plays at left back, could be Calafiori. He might go for Miles Lewis-Skelly, who again is a great ball progressor. He can carry the ball, he can pass between the lines. And probably David Raya is going to be really important. David Raya has become almost a primary playmaker for Arsenal. He's the guy who, when the press is set by the opposition, has to find the through ball, has to find the spare man, and he has the quality to do that. So I think it could be a really intriguing tactical battle. Arsenal will know that against a very effective organised press that Olympiacos have, they can't afford any mistakes. They can't afford any moment of sloppiness, or they could find themselves in a very difficult position. All that said, I think I do make Arsenal favourites, obviously, as the home team. I think they'll be in a good position, and they'll see this as a home game that they expect to win and want to win. But it's interesting to hear you say that historically the record between Olympiacos and Arsenal is actually very even. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe Arsenal might get a bit of a fright on Wednesday night.
Arsenal has also been, under Arteta, a very strong team for set pieces.
Right.
I believe this season Arsenal has the most set pieces per 90. I think it's like over 6 in the Premier League, but they concede the least. And half the goals they've scored this season are from corner kicks.
2 against Newcastle on Saturday.
Yep.
1 short corner with Declan Rice crossing for Mikel Merino, and then Martin Odegaard for Gabriel, who is so dominant in those situations. It's a huge strength of Arsenal's. So that, again, could be an important factor. How do Olympiacos compare in that respect?
Generally, we're terrible with set pieces. We did get 2 goals off of set pieces this past weekend. Primarily, my personal opinion is I blame a couple of individuals that are continually allowed to take set pieces, like Rodinei, for example. His set pieces are pretty terrible, and his crosses are not as great as well. But we have a couple of individuals that can get up in the air. Our captain Panos Retzos, center back, our other center back Lorenzo Pirola that we got from Salernitana. He's also pretty good in the air, but we don't have a lot of great pieces on set pieces. So that's the concern with us. And Arsenal's probably one of the best teams at set pieces in the world. That's a big concern of ours looking into this.
Yeah, and I think Arsenal these days are an incredibly physical team, right? They're so strong, tall, powerful. I think it's difficult for any team to live with them. Newcastle maybe are one of the most physical teams in the Premier League, but ultimately, when it came to set pieces, Arsenal were dominant. They won that battle. So that could be a really big factor. And again, in Europe, it's something that's been really effective for Arsenal. Sometimes the European games can be a little bit tighter, and having those options of dead balls to help break the deadlock can be so important. And it's not just corners. I think free kicks, they've been a threat, indirect free kicks, and obviously against Real Madrid, direct free kicks with Declan Rice scoring twice. That was a huge difference maker for them that night. So set pieces continue to be an important weapon for Arsenal. But I think Arsenal fans this season are hoping to see a bit more in open play. They've added the likes of Eze, the likes of Gyökeres, Madueke, lots of attacking talent in the team to complement Saka, Odegaard, Havertz when he comes back, Martinelli, Trossard, Nwaneri. It's a long list. You've got Max Dowman, who's just 15 years old, already making a bit of an impact. So it's a long list of attacking talent. And I think what many Arsenal fans are keen to see is, can they find a flowing style of football that is dangerous and creating chances regularly and open play. And actually, I think that's something Arsenal fans will be looking at this Olympiacos game for. They understand that it's going to be hard to create chances against the likes of Liverpool and Man City. But actually, they found last season in the Champions League, sometimes there was a little bit more space. There was a little bit more opportunity to play and express themselves. And maybe it will be the same this time around. We'll have to find out.
Is there any, before I ask you about lineup predictions, is there going to be any, I don't want to say ill will, but any tension because of the, Edu came under the Marinakis family from Arsenal. He's now he's doing more with Forest. I think he was only involved in about 2 deals for us this summer, not in talent identification, but just to get the deal over the line with Scipione. And then as well, he had a little bit with Mancha, our center back that we just picked up from Brazil. But is there going to be anything revolving around that, the Edu situation, maybe some upset feelings about that?
I don't know. I think Edu, he came back with Nottingham Forest to the Emirates Stadium a couple of weeks ago now. And from what I heard, he was a guest in the director's box. Everything was very cordial, good relationships, lots of handshakes and hugs, and people generally pleased to see him. So I don't really think there's any bad blood there. Edu and Marinakis have a really good relationship. They're old friends. They had a kind of social relationship before they had a business one. Edu's got his hands full at Nottingham Forest at the moment. They sacked their manager and they brought in Ange Postecoglou there now. So he's a busy man and he needs to try and turn things around at Forest. But I don't think so. I think Arsenal and Marinakis have a good relationship from what I understand. He's always been very welcome there. To be honest, the story it makes me think of most is when Olympiacos came to the Emirates Stadium just at the start of the coronavirus pandemic. And it led to the shutdown of the Premier League, basically.
I remember.
But I think there's no blame there. I think that's all forgiven and forgotten. But no, I don't think so. I think everything's fine on that front. And an interesting situation for Edu because, although he's working primarily on Nottingham Forest, I think the idea in the long term is that he'll kind of be across all of Marinakis' clubs, kind of overseeing things. So he loved the international dynamic of that. He felt it was a bigger, more senior role with more authority. And that was one of the reasons he chose to leave Arsenal, which I think surprised a lot of Arsenal fans at the time. But Arsenal have since recruited Andrea Berta as their new sporting director. And after the summer Arsenal had, Andrea Berta is a very popular man. So I don't think any bad feeling there.
Now let's talk about what you think the lineup will be. Do you expect some rotation from Arteta? We saw, of course, Saka started, Eze started, some names on the bench, Odegaard, Martinelli. What kind of rotation do you think we'll see during the midweek for the Champions League?
Yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of rotation, but probably not too much, maybe 2 positions, something like that. I think William Saliba started on the bench at Newcastle. He came on at half-time. I would imagine that he would come into the side alongside Gabriel. That's the strongest centre-half pairing. I think Raya will play. I think he's basically too important to not, and especially with Olympiacos' press, he'll be important. I think left-back, maybe there could be a change. Right-back, maybe. Jurriën Timber is kind of the first choice right back now, but Ben White is very capable and needs some minutes. He could play. Miles Lewis-Skelly, another England international, could come in for Calafiori. I think Zubimendi will play in midfield. I think probably Rice will play in midfield. Then it's kind of, I think Odegaard came on against Newcastle. If he's ready, he could start. Maybe Eze starts on the wing, on the left. I think Saka will play on the right because Noni Madueke is injured at the moment. And up front, it kind of has to be Gyökeres. Kai Havertz is still on the shelf, still sidelined after a knee injury. So Gyökeres is having to play every single game. And I don't see this one being any different. So that would be a couple of changes, Saliba in, maybe Odegaard in, maybe one of the fullbacks, 2 or 3 changes. I don't expect more than that. This is a Champions League game. Olympiacos will be taken seriously by Arsenal. They have a home game against West Ham on Saturday. And actually, I think they're probably more likely to rest or rotate players in that one. I think Mikel Arteta will want to win this first game, get the first Champions League win at home recorded, and move on from there.
If you had one weakness that you thought Olympiacos should exploit, you kind of talked about difficulty with the low block. What would be your one thing that you would recommend to Olympiacos to do to have the best chance of success against Arsenal?
Honestly, I mean, I don't think it is realistic from everything you've said about the coach and his style, but I think sitting in a low block can really frustrate Arsenal. So that defensively, that might be what I would suggest. From an attacking perspective, I think most opposition probably look at Arsenal's left back area as somewhere where they can maybe exploit some space, because whether it's Calafiori, whether it's Lewis Skelly, that player drifts into midfield, plays in kind of an inverted style, vacates that position. And we have seen, teams use direct passing, pace to exploit that space in behind. Whether Olympiacos have the players to do that, you would have to tell me, but that I think is maybe the area of the team that's defensively is a bit less secure.
So that actually gives me a little bit of hope, because we are very direct. In the Champions League in Europe, we average it's under 3 passes per possession. So we're very direct. So maybe that'll be one little point. It's the low block. I don't know if Mendilibar will do the low block. Maybe he'll be forced into it. We'll
maybe that can happen. Sometimes opposition, whatever their plan is, they just gradually get forced into it, compacted into it. And that's part of the issue for Arsenal, is that it seems to happen a lot, especially at home, and it gives them problems. But I think the hope is that with people like Eze, Odegaard, Saka, Arsenal will have enough to overcome that. But we shall see. As always, that first 20 minutes is going to be vital. If Olympiacos, survive that, are in the game, then I think their confidence will grow, and Arsenal might start to get a bit anxious. At the Emirates Stadium crowd, if it's not going to plan, it can get a bit tense there. And I spoke about the traveling fans, and I know they'll make an amazing noise from the away end. There'll be lots of them there as well. Olympiacos have the potential to make this night tricky for Arsenal. So I think it's all about finding a way to stay in the game, to pose threat on the break where they can, and maybe use the press to win those high turnovers. If they win those high turnovers, they're going to have a chance to put David Raya under pressure.
So tell me your match prediction then. Everything we've discussed.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think the weekend result for Arsenal at Newcastle is really an important one that's going to give the group a lot of strength and confidence. And I think it will help them on Wednesday night. I think they'll win this game. I don't think it will be totally straightforward, but I'm going to be confident, and I'm going to say a 3-1 win for Arsenal.
I don't think that's unreasonable by any stretch. As somebody who's been watching Arsenal his whole life, I don't think that's a very unreasonable take. On the live show, I had said that I think maybe El Kaabi finally starts hitting the ground running. We get a 1-1 draw, and everybody's happy on our side, at least.
Yeah, I think that would be a good result. I mean, I think Arsenal fans, right or wrong, would feel pretty frustrated with that result. But it's interesting, isn't it, with this group stage? I mean, not every game at this point has that kind of must-win element to it. Even if Arsenal draw this, they could still end up in a pretty good position once they play through the league stage. So I don't think there'll be any cause for despondency either way. But generally, Arsenal will be looking to win their home games. And I think with the exception of that PSG game, their recent home form in Europe has actually been very good. So I definitely make them favourites, but I'm looking forward to it and think it should be a really good game.
It really should. Now, James, I've had you here for about a half hour. When we close up all of our shows with our special guests with just a quick fire round to get to know you a little bit better. Quick questions. First thing that comes off the top of your head. So first thing is what's your favorite food?
Oh man, pizza.
Pizza. Any specific type?
Lots of meat and lots of chilies. Anything like that, I'm very happy, man.
Very nice. What would be your favorite movie and show?
Oh, that's a good question. Show, you know what, man? I was re-watching a bit of Breaking Bad the other day, and I still love that show. I think it's so brilliantly done. Movie. My favorite movie is a movie called The King of Comedy. It's a Scorsese film starring Robert De Niro, and it's kind of a dark comedy about a guy who wants to be a light entertainer and comedian, but goes about it all the wrong way. And yeah, it's a great film.
I think that's the first time I've gotten that film I've heard Breaking Bad before, but that's a first.
It's quite niche. It's quite niche, but that's good. It's good to have a specific answer for that question. And that is my favorite movie.
What about your favorite vacation spot?
Oh, it's Mallorca, island of
Magaluf?
Spain. Magaluf, I have done many years ago now. But no, on the other side of the island, there's a town called Poyensa. I have family who live out there, and I love to visit them, spend time. There's some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, I think. There's a beach called Formentor, which is absolutely stunning. You could be in the Caribbean, frankly. The sea's that clear. The sand is that pristine. So yeah, I love it out there, and having family out there as well means it's always a good time to catch up with them.
Yeah, I went out there about 10, 12 years ago.
Nice.
And, it was weird because I would think I was the only American there, and everyone was like, "Wait, what are you doing out here?"
I think it's too changed. Many of us. You know what? Funnily enough, I was speaking to Mikel Arteta in Singapore, and he holidays in Mallorca a lot. Every year, I think he goes out there, and he said, "Oh, there's a lot more Americans there now." And he was I don't know if he was telling me it as a good thing or a bad thing, but he commented on the fact that there's a lot more American tourists coming to Mallorca. I think the word is out there now that it's a nice place to go. So listen, if you ever get the chance, wherever you are in the world, I highly recommend it.
Two final ones. Your favorite football related memory. It could be from Arsenal or when maybe you were playing growing up. Your favorite football related memory.
Oh, I've got a lot. I've been very lucky. I'd have to say probably the first time I met Thierry Henry, I was invited to a screening of a special documentary, I think maybe about Thierry breaking the Arsenal goals record. And it was shown at the Emirates Stadium in the Diamond Club there. And I went to this screening, and afterwards there were kind of some drinks, like a drinks reception. And I was having a drink, and I just felt a hand on my shoulder. And I turned around, and it was Thierry Henry. And he was one of my real heroes and idols growing up. So to shake his hand and get to have a conversation with him was mind-blowing at that time, because I wasn't really working as a journalist. I was just a supporter. And what was really cool was then quite a few years later, I had the opportunity to interview him for The Athletic one-on-one and speak in detail about his time at Arsenal, all the goals he scored, what motivated him as a player, what made him great, the people who helped him. So that kind of brought everything full circle for me, and it's one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. So probably those two things combined, I would say.
Yeah, he was a legend for me playing too. We could only watch, it was either Man U or Arsenal when I was growing up. That's all you could watch. Of
Mm,
course, everybody
mm.
back then was Man U, and that's how I started watching Arsenal. So that would be a legendary moment for sure. That's an amazing experience you got. Now, the final question, if money was no problem, where would you go? Where would you like to go, I should say?
If money was no problem. You know what? I was with Arsenal, as I mentioned, on tour in the summer in Singapore and Hong Kong. And it was kind of my first time in sort of East Asia. I'd never really visited that part of the world before. And I loved it. I love food, the people, culture, scenery, everything. And so I want to go back to that continent, really. There's so many other places I'd love to visit. I'd love to visit Japan, Thailand, Malaysia, lots of places. So if money was no object, yeah, I think I'd be flying and boating around Asia, discovering new places.
That's another first. We've never gotten that one before.
There you go.
There you go. So, James, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a very busy guy, so thank you so much for taking some time, giving us a little bit more insight on what we can expect coming up on Wednesday. It was a pleasure to have you. Tell everybody where they can follow you for those that don't already know.
Yeah, sure. So I'm at Gunnerblog on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, whatever you want. YouTube as well. Check out my YouTube channel where I post a little review after every Arsenal game. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. It's been really fun and nice to chat about Olympiacos as well as Arsenal. And I'm really curious now what I'm going to see on Wednesday night. And I hope all your viewers enjoy the game, but not too much.
Guys, thank you all for tuning in. For those of you that are here, like and subscribe to help us continue to grow the red and white community. Follow James at Gunnerblog. Check out what he does on Arsecast. I believe it's every Tuesday, Arsecast Extra, or every Monday.
Every Monday, usually. Yeah, sometimes it changes, but usually Monday.
Depending on the fixtures, of course, I guess. So check out Arsecast Extra. He does a great job there as well. He's one of the foremost authorities, I would say, on all things Arsenal. Great source of information. So thank you, guys. Don't forget to vote for us in the Football Content Awards. The link is in the description. Help us out with that and help us try to win something and prove again that Olympiacos and Greek football matters. And lastly, Costa did an interview with the guys that did Olympiacos, the legend, the documentary covering our Conference League win and our Youth League win. It is in our YouTube page. Amazing from the producers, Red Mountain Films. Great guys, great stories about the process. Check that out. Thank you all for listening. This is Tiros International, by the fans, for the fans, and we'll see you all next time.